What is going on, RFL fans? Coach Chris Dunn here of the Sacramento Miners, back at it again for another episode of Miners Live, coming at you every single Tuesday night from 8 p.m. till 9 p.m. Thought about kicking the show off a little bit early tonight, and then realized, you know what? No, I'm just going to stick with the normal come and get it, 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., despite the fact that many of you may know I am a huge baseball fan as well. And I'm originally from Massachusetts. So being a Boston Red Sox fan, game four of the American League Championship Series is tonight. So that will be going on. So we might be getting out of here a little bit early so I can go and start catching that game. But committed to you guys here tonight for another episode of Miners Live. Really great stuff on the show tonight. Going to get into some news around the RFL. There is some news. I know it's the off season, but there is some news around the RFL right now. So we'll get into that. Also, what is it that I'm done with? What am I done with? I will tell you in just a few moments what exactly it is that I am absolutely done with. I'm done. It's over and I'm done with it. We'll have that coming up in just a few minutes. There is a new coach in the RFL. He goes by the name of Doug Baxter. I had a chance to sit down with him a couple days ago. I will have that interview for you on the show here tonight as well. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please go do so. Sacramento Miners RFL, Chris Dunn. You can find that channel on YouTube. If you aren't following on Twitter, at MinersRFL, on Instagram, at MinersRFL. Please, guys, really appreciate the support. Really appreciate all the love. I can see already in here tonight. We've got the cast of characters, the usual cast of characters. I see we've got Lito Loso in the chat. What's going on, buddy? We've got Keegan Mayer, fantastic defensive end from Ohio State. He's into the show. Eric Strotter, look at your boy. Toronto Thunderbirds cornerback, former Florida State Seminole, Eric Strotter. What's going on? CP, I see you in here. Good to see you, buddy. AR-15. All right, I guess this is where we're just going to get into it. I am absolutely done. I am 100% done with the slurpage of certain teams and certain teams just constantly getting hype. This year in the college series in particular, I don't feel that there is any team that is deserving or warrants any amount of excess hype. This season is completely wide open. There's a ton of parity so far through 6 weeks of the college series. Way more than we saw last year. Okay, Georgia was undefeated. They went undefeated. They won the national championship. By all accounts, it wasn't really close. Okay, the unfortunate thing is that we have now carried into this year, and all of that Georgia hype is still flowing. They started the year at number one. They won a couple games. Number one. Oh my God, is Georgia going to run the table again? Is Georgia going to run the table, go undefeated, and win back-to-back national championships? Is Asir Rice going to be able to do what Kai Cash was able to do? Right? That was the talk. Well, I'm here to tell you, this Georgia team, the way that they are constructed and the way that they are designing their weekly game plan, I guess, is the best way to put it. This Georgia team will not win the national championship. They will not. Now, they can win the national championship, but there's one thing. There's literally one thing that I think could take Georgia from not having a chance to win the national championship to winning the national championship. And I'll tell you what that one thing is. And it's such a small thing. It's so minor. But I watched this game this past weekend against Auburn. And I sat there in awe at how mediocre at best Georgia looked. And I tried to pinpoint it, and I watched both sides of the ball, and then suddenly it hit me. Suddenly it hit me what this Georgia team is missing, what this Georgia team needs to do to get them to where they could be compared to last year's team. Because right now, they're not there. All that Georgia hype, I'm done with it. Okay? Look at this Georgia game. I'll even just break it down. So I will go to a series that, for my money, is the reason why the way that they are constructed. Again, they have the talent. I'm not saying they need to, there's not anything that they have to do talent-wise. There's nothing that they have to do. They don't have to change the playbook. There's nothing that Georgia has to do that isn't already there that's going to prevent them from winning the national championship, except for one tiny, tiny thing. All they have to do, very simple. Jacarius Bess, great running back. I think we'll all agree, great running back. All they have to do is take him off the punt team. That's it. Take Jacarius Bess, remove him from being the punt returner, and this Georgia team can win the national championship. Let that sink in for a second. As minuscule as that is, as small of a thing as that is, you might be sitting there thinking, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's stupid. He's an idiot. What do you mean? Who cares if he's on the punt team? So what? He's on the punt team. He's their best runner. He's their best offensive player. That isn't the quarterback. What difference does it make? That means nothing. That has nothing to do with the outcome of the game. That has nothing to do with whether or not they're going to run the table. Nothing to do with whether or not they could win the national championship. I'm going to tell you right now, it has absolutely everything to do with whether Georgia can run the table, whether Georgia can win the SEC, and whether Georgia can win the national championship. It's plain and simple. Go back, watch that game, and I will take you through a drive towards the end of the second quarter. The end of the second quarter, Auburn has a 13-0 lead. Okay? If you watch the first half of this game, Auburn was dominating. Georgia looked overmatched. They looked silly. Asir Eyes wasn't doing much of anything. And I'll get into him a little bit more and what I would like to see from their offense to put him in a better position to succeed. Because yes, Georgia came back and they won the game. And yes, he threw, I think, 4 touchdown passes. And on paper, it looks fantastic. I think he only had 9 incomplete passes. On paper, it looks fantastic. The numbers look great. However, if it wasn't for Auburn completely throwing up a goose egg for most of the second half and Georgia hitting deep ball and coming up big in the second half, they don't win that game. And to be perfectly honest with you, Georgia didn't deserve to win that game. Auburn should have won that game. Auburn was the better team. They played better, and they should have won the game. This is a classic scenario where Georgia did not win that game. Auburn lost that game. Auburn's inability to close out, an inability to make stops in the second half lost them that game. They had Georgia on the ropes, and they lost. Feather in the cap to Georgia. They came back and won. It's not easy to win on the road in the SEC. I get it. They came back. They got the dub. And they still only have 1 loss on the season. Georgia is a great team. But if you take Jacarius Bess and you remove him from being the punt returner, they are, for my money, possibly the best team in the league. I think there's a couple teams that are up there. But right now, Georgia's not there the way that they are constructed, the way that they are playing. So we'll go back to, like I was saying, the end of the second quarter, Georgia's down 13-0. Auburn punts the ball, and Jacarius Bess returns. He's the return man. Jacarius Bess returns the ball to, I think it was about the 25. I think he fielded it at about the 25-yard line. First down, Jacarius Bess run play, no gain. Second down, Jacarius Bess run play, minimal gain. I think he maybe got a yard, maybe barely even a yard. Third down, pass play. AR-15 hits a big play. This was one of the ones he went up top. Big play, big hitter, gets them down to about the 10-yard line. Okay, so they were just shy of midfield. They go run, play, stuff. Now it's third down. AR-15 hits the deep ball, and they get down to the 10-yard line. On that play, look at the pre-snap. Look at Jacarius Bess pre-snap. If you go back and you look at that play, you're going to think, wow, that was a great ball by AR-15. Wow, that was an amazing catch. I forget who it was that made the catch. It was an amazing play all around. But pre-snap, look at pre-snap Jacarius Bess. He is hunched over and he is spent. He's gassed. He's absolutely gassed. Because on first down, he got no gain, and on second down, he got no gain. Explain to me how on first down, you barely move, and on second down, you barely move, but on third down, you are gassed. If they had handed him the ball on third down, which they wouldn't have because it was about 3rd and 9.5, he would have fumbled. If they tried to throw it to him, he would have dropped it, or he would have caught it in the flat and they got tackled right away. He was absolutely taxed. He was spent. Okay? The stamina is not there. The durability is not there. So why is he on your punt team? He fields a punt. He runs 10 yards, which is not good. 5 to 10 yards on a punt return. That's not good. But that 5 to 10 yards on the punt return, he now comes into the game, first down run play, second down run play, and now you've just lost arguably your best offensive go-to guy on third down. And maybe he's not even 100% on first and second down. It's just, it's a small thing. It's so small. But if Georgia were to take Jacarius Bess and remove him from the punt team, and I don't know if this is something that can be done. I don't know if this is something that has been discussed. I don't know if it's something that the front office would be open to. I don't know if Jacarius Bess wanted to be on the punt team. I don't know. I don't know any of this. But what I do know is that watching him play, you have to draw a correlation between his inconsistency and inability at time to his overall stamina and durability because he's fielding punts. And for some teams, it might not be that big of a deal, but guys, Georgia's defense is so good. They force their opponents to punt a lot. If Jacarius Bess is back there fielding 4, 5, 6 punts a game and getting an extra 5, 6 to 10 yards per punt return, a lot of them, they're fair caught. A lot of them go out of bounds. A lot of them, they get 2 or 3 yards fine. There's not a lot of punt return yards going on. But if you remove that, you get a full strength Jacarius Bess, 100%. There's no reason why any user submitted running back, there's no reason why any college series running back at all should get the ball on first down, run for no gain, get the ball on second down, run for no gain, and then be completely out of the play on third down because they're so tired. that shouldn't happen. I don't see it in any other team, but it was glaring to me watching that Georgia-Auburn game. And again, I was shocked that Auburn didn't hold on. I thought that Heller played probably the game of his life. I think C.J. Perkins was an absolute beast. C.J. Perkins was the best receiver on the field. And that's not taking anything away from Georgia's receivers. They played fantastic too. But C.J. Perkins was the best receiver on the field. And if it weren't for the fact that AR-15 was able to hit so many big plays, I would have said that Heller was the better quarterback on the field that game as well. Now, that's the little thing that I think Georgia can do. All you got to do is move Jacarius Bess away from punt return. He doesn't need to be on the punt return team. There's a third wide receiver on that team that's just as capable of returning punts, because at the end of the day, guys, how many yards do you get on a punt return? 2? What's the average yards on a punt return? I would love to know that. As a matter of fact, I would love, if there's anyone that wants to, one or two of the games this coming weekend, if you guys could do me a huge favor, I would love it. And I can come on next week and talk about it a little bit. But I know Mitch probably watches most of the games live and then goes back and rewatches a lot of them too. And he's doing a ton of stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that Mitch might even know some of these numbers because he watches that much film on a week in and week out basis. But I would like someone to watch a game or two, pick any game you want. But for that entire game, every single time there's a punt, do me a favor, please count how many yards there were on that punt. And then at the end of the game, give me a recap of the total number of punts in the game and the total number of yards that were gained. And I'll turn around and I'll do an average. And if we can do it for a bunch of games, great. Because I'd be willing to bet that there's probably only 2-3 yards per return. Oh, look at this. We got breaking news here. Apparently, Bess is coming off the punt return. So I don't know if this is something that was discussed after the game, if it was discussed prior to the game. I don't know if this is something that was literally just discussed in the last 15 minutes because I brought it up. I have no idea. All I know is that I watched the game and I couldn't believe that the star running back on Georgia just seemed like he was taken out of so many plays. And it looked like it was simply because he was tired. The stamina wasn't there. The durability wasn't there. So again, here we go, guys. Look at this is what you get on Miners Live. This is what I'm done. These are why I'm done with certain things. And every now and then we can make change. We can make change, guys. Look at right here. Breaking news. The commission said that Jacarius Bess will be taken off the punt return team. Watch out rest of the college series, because I'm telling you right now, you've watched these Georgia games so far this year and it's been defense, defense, defense. Every now and then AR-15 has a good game, but then the next week out, he kind of has an next week, maybe a clunker. Then he balls out again. Inconsistency on offense. Defense has always been there. Watch Jacarius Bess the rest of the way through the season if he gets removed from the punt return team. You can say that it's ridiculous. You can say that it's stupid. And you can say that I don't know what I'm talking about. But clearly I do, if it's gotten to the point where it's now causing the front office to make a change. Clearly, I'm not the only one that is looking at that game this past weekend and maybe even weeks prior and wondering, wow, I wonder what this might look like if Jacarius Bess was just not on the punt team. Here we go right here. Georgia winning it all now. I mean, I don't know. But there's a chance maybe I wouldn't have picked them to win it all if this change wasn't made. But I certainly think now there's a chance that they can win it all. And it's such a small, minor detail. but it can prove huge dividends. Little minor depth chart things like that can prove huge. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with Georgia. Prior to that, I was done with it. Certain teams get way too much hype, and it's not always warranted, and they just don't deserve it. I don't care if you got 15 guys on your squad, but if you're barely winning games, look, Georgia barely beat UNC. They barely beat Alabama. They caused Miles McCain to throw 3 interceptions, and they couldn't capitalize. They should have won that game against UNC running away, and they didn't. So look for Georgia moving forward. We'll see. I think Georgia is a great team. I think they have a great chance to move up in the power rankings. I'll get through my top 10 power rankings, and you'll see where Georgia is. Yes, they're in the top 10 power rankings. Duh. But I'll show you exactly where I have Georgia in the power rankings. I mean, I don't know, man. You haven't had a bad game yet? Okay. So look out for Georgia. Look out for Ja'Carrius Best. Look out for them the rest of the way. I'll get into my top 10 power rankings and where I have them in the power rankings after 6 weeks. But we got into some news around the RFL, some news around the league. The Mexico City Diablos have acquired George McCafton from the Salt Lake City Pioneers. This was a move that was announced several weeks back. It hasn't really gotten a lot of traction, hasn't really been talked about a lot. Granted, we're in the off season. We are knee deep in the college series. We have a ways to go before the RFL season even starts. But this is a move. This is probably the biggest trade so far this offseason, certainly since the college series has started. And so the Diablos go out and they get George McCafton. Now, why is this a big deal? Right? For those of you that followed the RFL last season, George McCafton was the worst quarterback in the league. I don't know that there's anyone that's going to argue with me on that. He was terrible. He was easily the worst quarterback in the ARC. He had 27 interceptions. No quarterback in the ARC had more interceptions than George McCafton. In fact, he only had 23 touchdown passes. So he had 4 more interceptions than he had touchdown passes. Okay? It's terrible. Like, that's awful. And in the real world, you don't even have a job. So George McCafton should be thankful that the Diablos went out and acquired him. And I do think that it's a good move for the Diablos. I think that this is a very low risk situation for the Diablos. There's only 1 year left on McCafton's contract. He's only due about $5.5 million. What was the number? $5.48 million to be exact. 1 year left, and then he's a free agent. So from the Diablo standpoint, they're in win now mode. They're trying to win right now. You just saw a couple months ago in the draft, their first round draft pick, they went out and drafted Penn State quarterback James Ramos. Now, if you're in win now mode, you don't really want to throw out a rookie quarterback. But there could have conceivably been a situation where maybe the Diablos felt Ramos was the best quarterback for them had they not gone out and got McCafton. And now look, McCafton's not the future here. I believe he's an 80 overall. He's, I think, the lowest overall rated quarterback in the ARC. The numbers weren't good. But for a team that's in win now mode, and that, like the Diablos are, this is a great move. It's low risk. There's only 1 year left. It's not a lot of money, and it gives James Ramos a chance to watch, learn, and see what it's like, develop a little bit, and then potentially take over the team next year if McCafferty walks in free agency, which I would imagine that he will, or something else happens. I mean, who knows? There's a full season. We could see anything could happen. So I think it's a good move for the Diablos, but I do also feel like a little confusion as to, were they in the market to get a veteran quarterback? Were they in the market to acquire a starting quarterback prior to the draft? And that's the question that I would ask Coach Forbes, because if he was in the market to acquire a quarterback prior to the draft, I wonder, was he just unable to? Was there not a quarterback? Was there not a deal to be made? Was there not a trade that could be made because they used a first-round pick on James Ramos? And if you're going to use that first-round pick, that's big-time draft capital. If you're going to use that first-round pick on a quarterback, you would like to start that quarterback, or at least give him a chance to start. Now, all of that being said, I don't think they took the right quarterback. James Ramos was the third quarterback taken in the draft, and I had him, I believe, as my fifth or sixth overall quarterback in the draft. Now, every coach is different, and everyone has their own draft board, but we saw Leo Moon get drafted in the second round after James Ramos. We saw Owen Jack get drafted in the second round after James Ramos. I would have taken both of those guys ahead of James Ramos. And had I taken one of those guys, I don't know that I would have gone out and made the move to get McCafferty, especially because, and this is where the confusion really sets in for me, I feel like the Diablos gave up too much. You just drafted the guy that is hopefully going to lead the team into the future, James Ramos, by using a first round pick. And then you turned around and you acquired McCafferty, but you gave up a second and a fourth round pick next year. So basically, the Diablos have given up a first round pick, a second round pick, and a fourth round pick. And they don't necessarily know who their best quarterback is. They don't know who their best option is at quarterback. Now, I would assume that McCafferty would get every opportunity to start. I think that McCafferty could benefit immensely from a different playbook, from a user-submitted coach, a coach like Coach Forbes, who knows what he's doing and can scheme and game plan and put McCafferty in position to succeed. I have 100% confidence that Coach Forbes can do that, and McCafferty will be significantly better than what he was last year. And I would imagine that that's exactly what he was thinking when he made the deal, because otherwise I have a hard time understanding why you would use a first round pick, a second round pick, and a fourth round pick to get a 69 overall rookie quarterback that you don't know what you're going to get from for at least 1 or 2 more years when you're in win now mode and you're arguably the best team in the NRC, one of, if not the best team in the NRC, certainly one of the top 3 teams in the NRC, with a chance to win now. You don't want to throw out a rookie quarterback. Completely get it. I wouldn't want to throw out a rookie quarterback either. But then to turn around and give up a second round pick and a fourth round pick in next year's draft, and hopefully those are late picks, because I forget whether I'm not sure if they were actually their own picks or there were additional picks that the Diablos had acquired in another trade. I believe there were additional picks that they had acquired. I think the Diablos had multiple picks, and they were moving around some of those additional picks. But I just think it was kind of a little much. Again, McCafferty's only got 1 year left on the deal. So you gave up a second round pick and a fourth round pick for a rental. And that's fine. Sometimes you got to go after your guy. And you can't fault the GM for going after his guy. And if that was his guy, and there were there were other moves that had tried to be made and were unsuccessful, I think McCafferty will be significantly better this year than he was last year. 100%. All right. So I'm going to give it a minute. Give it a chance to go out to the comments here. What do we got out here? Anyone got anything good? I see Lito with a bunch of strong arm emojis. We get it, man. You're good. Here we go. All right, here. Alvin Mack, Dunn woke up and decided he wanted violence. No, I woke up and decided I wanted some coffee. Cheers. There's that slurpage that I was talking about earlier. What else do we got? James Ramos, here it is, listening to more fuel to hush the critics. Here it is. So here's your boy right here. So here we are right now. James Ramos, fan of the show, watching the show right now. And I'm curious because I don't know what this does for James Ramos. I don't know what this does for him. I think that McCafferty will be significantly better. But I think that Forbes wants to play Ramos. Clearly, he had him as one of his top 3 quarterbacks in the draft. He may have even had him as his number 2 quarterback in the draft. He probably didn't. He probably had him as his 3rd best quarterback in the draft, and he was able to get his 3rd best quarterback. And as a coach, you have to be happy with that. I look at it from my perspective. I was able to get Pavel Frederick. Pavel Frederick was the 9th wide receiver taken in the draft. I had Pavel Frederick as the 4th, maybe 5th, but he was certainly inside the top 6 wide receivers in the draft. And I got him at 9th. That's a game changer for me. That's a no-brainer. And so if Forbes had Ramos as his number 3 quarterback going into the draft, he was there at the end of the first round. He knew that he wasn't going to get another pick until the end of the second round. So he went and he got his guy. You can't fault him for that. He went and he got his guy. And that's what you do. That's what every single RFL coach should be doing. These draft picks are nice. All you college series guys, these draft picks are nice and they're cute and they're novelties. But you know what they are at the end of the day in the RFL? They're 69 overall and 70 overall. And I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. James Ramos was one of the best quarterbacks in the college series last year. He's a 69 overall, and he's arguably 3rd string on a contending team right now. So AR-15 wants to talk about how he hasn't had a bad game and he's gone out and he's the 2nd best quarterback in the league, only to the guy at USC. Why? Because you were the number 2 team in the country? I don't think there's a single quarterback in the college series this year that is better than the 4th best quarterback in the college series last year. Think about that. I said that. I think, let's see. I think Owen Jack. I think Daryl Johnson. I think Kai Cash. And I think Leo Moon are all better than whoever might be the number 1 quarterback in the college series this year. And as of right now, I can't tell who it is. Last year, it was a no-brainer who the number 1 was, and we were all comparing and arguing and debating over who number 2 and 3 were. That was it. This year, I think we're debating over who number 1 is, because some people might think whoever's number 1 is number 4. Right? Like, you could make a case for... I feel like Monty Wyatt's not getting enough love, right? Like, I don't see AR-15 being any better than Monty Wyatt or Poole at USC, right? Like, I feel like, again, and this goes back to the parity, there's so much parity in this college series. That's not a bad thing. This isn't knocking AR-15. This isn't saying he sucks. It's just saying, stop with the crazy amounts of hype, right? There's a lot of parity. And at the end of the day, we see national championship teams win with fifth or sixth best quarterback in the league. It's not always the best quarterback in the country that wins the national championship. And so the correlation to that is, just because you are the quarterback of the number one team in the country or the number two team in the country doesn't make you the first or second best quarterback in the league. That's just not the way it works. It's common sense. I can make an argument that I don't think USC has the number one quarterback in the league. Now, I might be wrong, and I haven't sat down and dissected the numbers on a week in and week out basis to do so, because quite honestly, right now we're 6 weeks into the season, and I don't think it really matters. But there are some quarterbacks out there. Look, I think Mourning at Oklahoma is good. I think he's significantly better ranked amongst his peers at quarterback than his team is ranked amongst their peers in the standings. Wherever Oklahoma may land in the standings tomorrow night on RFL Live, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time to RFL Live, you'll get the top 25 standings. You'll get the top 25 rankings. I guarantee you, wherever Oklahoma falls in that top 25, Allen Mourning is a better quarterback. Allen Mourning is higher in the quarterback rankings than Oklahoma is in the top 25 rankings. And I bet you I could say that, I could make that case for several quarterbacks. There are some quarterbacks that are really talented. Do I think AR-15 has the capability of being the first quarterback taken in the draft next season or 2 years from now? Absolutely. 100%. I think most people would probably lean that way. But, and this goes back to my thoughts on Georgia and their overall game planning and what I've seen, I think the focus from the Georgia offense needs to be more balanced in their pass attack. Another thing that I noticed was Georgia and AR-15 are very deep ball dependent, deep ball oriented. They have the talent out wide. They have the talent at receiver, and Azir Eyes has the arm strength to get the ball down the field. And so they do. And sometimes they hit and sometimes they don't. And if you have a 50%, if you have a 30% completion percentage on balls that are thrown 40 yards down the field, that's still really good. Because if you can hit a 40-yard pass play on any one drive, you're automatically in field goal range. I mean, unless you start on the shadow of your own goal line, you hit a 40-yard pass play at any point in a drive, you're in. You're in field goal range. I would like to see Georgia be a little bit more consistent in their overall offensive pass attack. More quick slants, more receivers in the flat, more hooks, more quick ins, quick outs, less of the deep posts, the streak routes, the deep corner. Right? I want some more of those. The wide receiver quick screen. Right? Get the ball out to Tyreek Bryant. Let him go. Get the man the ball in space and let him run. That's where I think Georgia's going to win the national championship. And I still think they can. I still think they can. All right. And then other little bit of news around the Miners. You may have seen that we do have some alternate uniforms that we're going to be introducing. There's a Color Rush uniform that you can see right here. The Color Rush uniform, the all navy. We did decide to go with the same uniforms, same designs and everything as last year. We will hopefully have the Color Rush in a couple games this year. And then also there's an alternate home uniform. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to utilize this uniform in game, only because typically you wear your whites on the road. And the problem is in order for the uniforms to be edited, you have to have control of that team. And typically the home team is the team that is controlled on the broadcast. So that's in order to get these alternate home uniforms in play, which I really like. I like the gold pants with the gold helmet. In order to get these alternate home uniforms in play, we'll have to have some conversations with the front office and see what games might make the most sense. Perhaps there's a game where the road team is wearing a gray or something, or a dark gray, and we'll be able to wear the whites. We'll be able to wear the whites on the road that way. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like. I do like the Color Rush uniforms. If you watched any of the games last year, there was one game in particular where we did wear the Color Rush uniform last year. It was against the London Bulldogs. I do like those uniforms. And along the lines of, since we're talking about the London Bulldogs, one other thing that I did notice and I wanted to draw attention to is the London Bulldogs actually announced some new uniforms. They have an entirely new uniform scheme this year, and they're going with the white helmet and the red jerseys. So I really like the London Bulldogs uniforms this year. I think the red jerseys and the white helmet look really clean. And for those of you that know me, you know that I'm big on uniforms. I'm big on jersey, pant, helmet combinations. I appreciate the London Bulldogs for not having the English flag on their helmet or on their jersey or on their pants. I do indeed appreciate that. All right. So I did sit down this past weekend with Coach Doug Baxter of the Brooklyn Bulls. He is the newest member of the RFL, the newest coach and general manager here in the league. So this is a pre-recorded interview with Coach Doug Baxter. I'm going to get to that right now for you guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back a little bit after the interview to wrap up the show because, again, don't forget, top 10 power rankings coming up. Bulls. Coach, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. I guess I'll just kind of start off by asking you, what drew you to the RFL?
Well, thanks, Coach. Great to talk to you. Great to be on. Really appreciate what you've done in the league already. But I think that's probably the answer right there in itself, right? The RFL is without a doubt, the highest caliber of competition. And I think anyone who prides themselves on being competitive and being a winner wants to win at the highest level. So, with the NAFL folding, I had a decision to make about where my next step was going to be. And I didn't want to, go down or lateral as far as competition. I wanted to, take it up to the top level. And that's what the RFL is all about.
When you sat down and had conversations before you decided on joining the Brooklyn Bulls and taking over as GM, clearly there are other teams that are available. There are other openings throughout the RFL, both in the ARC and in the NRC. What is it about Brooklyn? What is it about the Bulls franchise that drew you to them? And then I guess to follow up on that, were there any other teams that you looked at that it was very difficult to pass up on? I guess like the Bulls were your first choice, I assume.
Yeah.
Since you chose them, but who else was there that you had to think long and hard about?
The incredible thing is that the opportunity to join the RFL in its own right is a privilege, and the fact that there were multiple teams expressing interest, was something I was really appreciative for. But it was pretty easy for me. I mean, the Bulls, I'm a New York guy,
Okay.
I used to, I think somebody in the league office actually used to live in the Prospect Park area. And I used to live at Prospect Park as well. Back when I was coaching NJC, the ASA Avengers. It's the only college football in Brooklyn. So I've coached in Brooklyn before at the NJC level. So getting to come all the way up to the professional level was a no-brainer, and obviously the cupboard's not bare here. This is a winning team as far as the regular season goes. Now it's time to ratchet it up, re-rack the bar like a high jumper and get over that playoff goose egg.
Have you had a chance to look at the RFL as a whole, other teams, rosters, lineups? Like, how much did you get to follow the RFL? Obviously, you had prior obligations, you had other things that you were doing. I assume that you weren't actively following the RFL necessarily while doing those other roles and responsibilities. So how long have you actually been, I guess, following the RFL? And are you, if you haven't been doing it that long, are you worried about that transition a little bit and that sort of lack of, I don't want to say lack of knowledge, but I guess lack of experience of the league?
Yeah, that's a great question. Always admired from afar, always known exactly what the RFL was. But you're right. When you're committed to something day in, day out, and you have to be building a winning program where you are, it doesn't do you any good to be scouting teams and opponents that aren't in your league, right? So intimacy, not at all. That's something I'm gonna have to get real cozy in the off season with, and that's something I'm not afraid of to roll up my sleeves and get real comfortable with the competition in this league. But yeah, I mean, now that I'm here in the RFL, this is the day to day. So now I have to reprioritize, and all the scouting books and programs and even personnel that we had before in Fargo are not really applicable here. So that's actually the first step I've been taking. I've actually been in conversations over this weekend. And since the hire was made, with several people who've expressed interest in being a part of our scouting department here, not only to help with self-scouting from the last few years of game footage, but as well as the college series.
So you kind of joined the league at the perfect time.
Yeah, it seems
I say
like
that. Yeah, I say that for two reasons. One, because there's still plenty of time before the season starts. And two, I also kind of say that selfishly because this is around the same time when I joined the league last year. So I look back to when I joined the league, and I was very similar to you in the sense that I had recently come across the RFL and immediately was drawn.
Yeah.
I started watching games. I started watching podcasts. I believe the college, as a matter of fact, when I joined last year, the college series hadn't even started yet, and the RFL season had already ended.
Oh,
So
that
I
would
was,
have been the perfect time. I was just a hair late.
yeah, I was in that kind of in between period where I was watching just the podcasts and the archives. I was on the YouTube channel watching old podcast episodes just to try to get a feel of what the league was about. And then when the college series started, I got really into it and was even more excited about the prospect of having these college players come up and be able to
Yeah.
draft them. And so along those lines, since we are in the middle of the college series now, have you had a chance to look at the college series that much, and
Yeah.
and what's that been like for you, obviously being very, very green and very new to the league?
Yeah. So been immersing myself in it. That's actually, been beneficial because not only am I watching it, with fresh eyes, but basically have assembled at this point an entire defensive scouting staff. Still working through our offensive scouting staff. So now I'm getting, sounding boards, multiple eyes and ears with position specific focus, and we can compare notes on these games. And that's just going to not only either validate or invalidate maybe some of the things I'm thinking I'm seeing, or you don't want a confirmation bias either. So, but either way, having multiple sets of eyes to be able to look on the talent here. And also I got to remember, like, hey, it's great to be looking at all these players now, but I'm not going to get to call a name until after I get through a full season. So as much as we have to do this work now, then we have to put it away in the back pocket and make sure we're really focused on the team we have and what moves we may or may not need to make in order to be competitive before we can draft anyone.
So you mentioned you've kind of taken I guess a little bit more of a focus on the defensive side of the ball in terms of scouting and are working a little bit more towards the offensive side. So then having said that, I have to ask, do you consider yourself more of a defensive minded coach or an offensive minded coach, or do you
Yeah.
have a balance there?
That's a good question. So I started at middle linebacker for St. John Fisher in college and was a backup quarterback. Got to play a little bit, but then ironically, while I played mostly defensive, my career in the NAFL was an offensive coordinator, actually a quarterback's coach first, then offensive coordinator, then head coach in Fargo. So, and a play caller for, all 5 of those years. I'm actually not going to call plays. That's a decision I've made here in the RFL. I'm going to, fill out the staff with a capable play caller. But yeah, it's certainly nice to have played on both sides of the ball. But I would say I'm holistic, and I've played special teams as well. So never coached them, but I have a strong appreciation for all 3 phases of the game.
Well, I look at the offensive side of the ball, and certainly the Miners had a chance to play the Bulls last season. I actually remember, I believe week 1 was the game where Damani Manuel had the 98-yard touchdown run, which I've on previous shows talked about possibly being the best run. I think it probably was the best run of the RFL season last year.
I would probably agree with you. It was a phenomenal run.
So I look at the offensive side, and you got a guy like Lane Kearney, and you got a guy like David Jones in the backfield. But then I also look on the defensive side of the ball, and I remember vividly that game. I believe Brady Knight had 2 interceptions on Chumlee in the first quarter and a half. And Jack Brown is obviously a stud in his own right. So, do you have a area that you would like to build up the most, or an area that you feel is a strength already? And maybe you don't. I mean, I guess the question I should ask you first is, have you even had a chance to look over your roster in great detail? Do you even necessarily know what you have out there yet?
You know what? I've gotten to be really familiar with the roster as it stood at the end of last season and kind of post draft. I know there's some talent that's been brought on to the team, and you consider, you mentioned a lot of great names, but then you also think about somebody like Brock Melton out of Georgia, for our first pick. Kid's got speed that you could only dream of, and we're stacked on offense. Honestly, I mean, it's a very talented group, and that's where, I'm not here to blow anything up. I'm here to be additive. And if there's one final ingredient needed to make this whole thing really explode and kick off. I mean, I think we have the potential to be a dynamic, multiple high scoring offense. And we have really talent, like you said, Jack, and, there's a ton of guys on defense all over the team. We just got to see, are we in the best positions, formation wise? Are we in the best fits and schemes? That's something we're going to evaluate. So self-scouting is really critical. And that's why, my biggest focus, as much as I've been trying to watch all the CS games, has really been a lot of self-scouting from last 2 seasons.
Yeah. You look at Carlos Luzon and you look at Brock Melton, and it's really hard to think that those 2 receivers aren't going to be certainly the future for you there in Brooklyn, but also what might potentially get you to, where you ultimately want to be, which is, make the playoffs, win the Relo Bowl, that sort of stuff. I mean, those 2 guys right there are going to help you get there.
And we're very fortunate that we have guys like Zach and Griffin that have been around and played in this league and understand what it takes to compete at a high level. So I'm not looking for guys like Carlos and Brock to just carry the team on their shoulders. I mean, we have, Freeney is captain, and I think or maybe it's Griffin. I think it's Freeney's a captain, and there's just a lot of knowledge can be gleaned from the guys we have here. And, I think it's good that we have that much talent. It's how do you get them all on the field? Is the question.
Right. So one thing that I was a little bit surprised about when I learned that there was a new coach taking over the Brooklyn Bulls was that there are several teams in the RFL that are looking for GMs. They're looking for guys to come in and take over. And when I look at the Brooklyn Bulls, to me, I look at that as joining what I might say, obviously I have an ARC bias being in the ARC South, but I'm also, not stupid. And I can look at the ARC North, and for my money, the ARC North is the most difficult division, not just in the ARC. I think it's the most difficult division in the entire RFL. So obviously the Columbus Aviators go 14-2 last year. I know what they're capable of. We came up just short against them last year. The Chicago Cougars are always going to be up there. Obviously, Mix puts a great product on the field each and every week, each and every season. The Toronto Huskies are a powerhouse franchise. And, I guess you could say that maybe they had a little bit of a down year, but they still went 10-6. And then the Brooklyn Bulls went 10-6. There's a 10-6 team that finished in last place in that division. And that was the Brooklyn Bulls that you are taking over. So what are your expectations taking over a team in a division that is so competitive and so difficult right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, right? 10-6, and you're the last place team in the division. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I think ultimately we have to, let me take a step back. I wanted to compete at the highest level. And, what good is it to when there's multiple options on the table? I won't get into naming other teams because that wouldn't be fair to them. But I could go if I'm gonna climb to the highest peak. I want it to be the toughest, climb. And for me, I'm a Brooklyn. I've coached in Brooklyn. I'm a New York State guy. To me, what better than channeling the essence and the spirit of the fighting spirit of the city of New York and the borough of Brooklyn, and say, look, like, we're not afraid of a fight, and we'll bring it to anybody. And that starts with the toughest, arguably, to your point, the toughest division in football.
So I'll get you out of here with this final question here. Obviously new to the league. Have you had a chance to kind of look around and identify any potential rivalry or any potential matchup that you're really looking forward to? I know that when I say this because when I joined the league, there was only one other user GM in the league, and that was San Antonio and Coach Frankie. And so my goal, and it was easy for me because Frankie had just won the division with the Dreadnoughts the year before. I made it my goal that I wanted to win the division. My first goal was I just wanted to finish better than San Antonio. And then my second goal was I wanted to win the division, or I wanted to make the playoffs. My third goal was I wanted to win the division. But now, 1 year in, I say this, and I'm sure that Frankie would say the same thing. I feel like the Sacramento Miners and the San Antonio Dreadnoughts have this rivalry where every game is just magnified and it means so much. We play each other twice a year, which obviously adds to that.
Right.
But is there anything in your own division, or maybe some other team, or maybe another GM that you've been in contact with? Is there anything that you look at and you're like, God, that for me, that's the team. That's the team that I'm really like, I want that W right there. You circle that thing on the calendar.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious answer would be Columbus because they won the division, right? But I think you said it best. Like, we have to talk about goals and priorities. I mean, this is a winning franchise that has yet to win a playoff game. So goal number one is make the playoffs. 1B is win, and in the playoffs, win a playoff game. So I'm certainly excited about, Coach Back and Coach Mix with Chicago. There's going to be some really tough competition. But you know what? To me, one of the greatest coaches of all football history said, when it's too tough for them, it's just right for us. So that's the way the Brooklyn Bulls are going to approach it, is bring it on. We will end up having division rivalries. I'm sure they're ingrained, they're embedded. But every play in every season is going to be a story and a life of its own. And this season, we'll just have to find out who's ready to bring it when they play Brooklyn.
All right. Well, I'm certainly going to say I look forward to battling it out on the field. Miners versus Bulls. It's going to be fun. It's always great to have another guy in the league, some more user activity, which is fantastic. That being said, I hope that we mop the floor with you, Coach.
Same. Best of luck until we play you, Coach. Best of luck until we play you.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time, Coach Baxter, newly hired general manager of the Brooklyn Bulls. Thanks for coming on Miners Live. We'll talk soon, buddy.
Thanks. Heard that. #heard that.
All right. Take care, man.
Bye, Coach.
As I join you now back live, my sit down one-on-one this past weekend with Coach Doug Baxter, new general manager of the Brooklyn Bulls. Super excited to see what that ARC North is going to look like. It's no joke, guys. I wasn't kidding. It's by far the hardest division in the RFL. There's now 3 user coaches in the ARC North, and the team that Coach Baxter is taking over was 10-6 last year, and they finished last place. So it just goes to show you the overall talent in that division. We saw quarterbacks, 2 superstar rookie quarterbacks get drafted last year, both of them to the ARC North. So we can sit here and we can say that the ARC North is the toughest division in the RFL right now. But just imagine what that division is going to look like when Geno Gannon and Marquise Washington have 3 years under their belt. Imagine what it's going to look like this year in their second year when they're not a rookie and they've developed significantly from their first year of play. So really excited for you guys, excited for the fans, excited for the league, not excited because I have to go against those teams. And maybe they're not on my schedule during the regular season, but certainly if I'm going to get the Miners to where I think they can be and where we can be, it's going to have to be at the expense of the Chicago Cougars and at the expense of the Columbus Aviators and possibly now at the expense of the Brooklyn Bulls. Right? Like there's a new sheriff in town, and it's no joke that the user submitted coaches, the teams with user coaches typically play better. Those teams usually have better success than the teams that have an absentee owner, an absentee general manager. It's just the way that it is. I shouldn't have to explain that any further. You should understand why that is the way that it is. But that's in fact what it is. And so the Chicago Cougars, phenomenal franchise. Columbus Aviators, phenomenal franchise. They were the worst team in the RFL 2 years ago. They went 14-2 last season. That's what a superstar quarterback can do in this league. And we took them to the wire last year in the regular season. And we took the Cougars to the wire last year in the regular season as well. I remember Mix and I had conversations after that regular season game. I believe the final score of that game ended up being 28-27 or 27-26 or 31-30. I believe we lost to the Cougars by 1 point. It was a game that I thought the Cougars just had us. I thought they had us the whole game. We were able to come back late, make it a game, and fell just short. I believe we had a chance to stop. We had a chance to stop the Cougars on 3rd down. All they had to do was pick up a 1st down, and they could run the clock out. Had we stopped them, we could have had 45 seconds to maybe get in field goal range. They picked up the 1st down. They took a knee. They won the ball game, and Bob's your uncle. So the ARC North is the most difficult division in the RFL. And for Coach Baxter to enter into that fray, into that dogfight, that's impressive. And let's see what he's able to do in his first year in the league. All right, it's about that time. We've only got a few minutes left in the show, and I know that I tease you guys with this all the time, but the power rankings. We've got my Chris Dunn, my Miners Live, my Campus Rewind power rankings right now for the college series. And where does it lie? Where does it start? Right? There's always some point in these power rankings where somebody's going to say, what is this guy talking about? Where is that going to take place? Because I promise you, somewhere in these power rankings, these top 10 power rankings, there's going to be a moment where one of you guys say, what in the wide world of sports is going on here? And what is he talking about? This man is crazy. I'm telling you right now, I'm not crazy. Yes, tomorrow night you'll get the full a league official RFL top 25 for the college series. The top 25 rankings will drop tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. RFL Live. Don't miss it. But right now, the top 10 power rankings, again, this has nothing to do with conference record. I don't care if you are 2-1 in the conference and someone else is 1-1 in the conference. You're not automatically getting bumped above them simply because you have a better conference record. Not in these power rankings. Because for my money, at the end of the day, everything's going to work itself out. And these are the teams that I feel are the best teams in the league. I started doing these power rankings 2 weeks ago. And the goal with these power rankings is that at the end of the season, I can look back at the power rankings that I'm about to reveal right now and say to you, they're not that much different. Whereas the top 25 rankings are going to change dramatically week in and week out simply because somebody won a conference game. These power rankings are not supposed to shift that greatly without a team, A, blowing somebody out, B, getting blown out, or C, just flat out losing a game and falling out of the top 10. Okay? So without any further ado, the top 10 power rankings, we have a new team in the top 10. This team was not in the top 10 last week. They were not in the top 10. For the very first time this season, entering the top 10 in the power rankings, we have the Michigan Wolverines. Look, we talk ad nauseum about how pathetic the overall awareness is for Austin Briley. It's bad, right? It's bad. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not sugarcoat it. The awareness is atrocious. I believe 17 people have already commented on Briley's awareness in the chat here tonight. And I think it's a 64. It's terrible. But your boy is balling out. Back and forth game against Oregon. Looked like maybe Oregon was going to take it. Michigan held on. Briley is balling out. And if you go and look at the numbers, again, I talked earlier in the show about there's so much parity in the league and there's no real clear-cut number one quarterback in the league. The difference between the number one quarterback in the college series right now and the number 5 or 6 quarterback in the college series right now is not as great as you might think. Sure, there is some disparity, but it's not as great as you think. It's not nearly as great as it was last year. Last year, we had about 4 quarterbacks that were worth discussing. And then we had about 20 others that were just kind of along for the ride. They were like cheerleaders on the sideline for their team, right? There's a lot more quarterbacks this year. And I think in a future show, I'll probably get into a little bit more detail on those quarterbacks. And as the season goes along, as we get closer towards the end of the season and awards time and all that, we will look over position by position and some of the guys that we think are rising up. AR-15's not happy. He's just not happy. You can't say anything. You can't say the words, there are 5 really good quarterbacks in the college series without AR-15 getting upset. Dude, come on. Get over it. Like, no one is saying you're a bad quarterback. You want, if people don't slurp the hype 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're just unhappy and you're going to complain? No one has said you're a bad quarterback. All I said earlier in the show was I wish that the team would use more checkdowns. I wish the team would use more quick hitters and stop relying on the 30, 40, and 50-yard ball down the field. If that's criticism, then so be it. If that's going to keep you up at night, then so be it. But there's a lot of hype around certain teams in the league this year and every year, really. And it's not always warranted. If you can't objectively take a back seat and look at some of the other quarterbacks in the college series and think to yourself, wow, these guys are really good, then I don't know what games you're watching other than your own. Right? Like, because in week 1, you were the 4th best quarterback, maybe. And maybe there's a couple weeks in the last 4 or 5 where you've been the number 1 quarterback, but it's not glaring. It's not like for the past 5 weeks we've had the same number 1 overall quarterback performance week in and week out. We're not getting that. That's where the parity comes in. That's why this college series is so much different. I don't want to say it's better, because I think from a talent disparity, last year was better, right? It was very easy to look at players from last year and say, this guy is clearly number 1, and this guy is clearly number 2, and he's way down here. It's not even close. So yeah, I think that there was more talent. I do feel that the top 3 quarterbacks or top 4 quarterbacks last year are all better than the number 1 or number 2 quarterback this year. But that's not taking anything away from the quarterbacks this year. There's so much parity in the league this year. And it's a good thing. It means right now, halfway through the season, we don't know what the Final Four is going to look like. We have no idea. That's a good thing. That's good for the game. That's good for the sport. That's good for all of the user-submitted prospects. I'm sorry if that means that we're not going to slurp the hype 24 hours a day, but that's just the way that it is. Coming in at number 9, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Roll Tide. They don't play this week. They don't move in the power rankings. Plain and simple. They didn't play. I'm not going to move them up. There wasn't anything that drastic to warrant them falling to number 10 or moving up to number 8. Alabama stays in at number 9, as does Baylor, staying the same in at number 8. The Baylor Bears, again, they did not play this week. They do not move. We do have this next team in a new spot this week in the power rankings, and that is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They were number 10 in the power rankings last week. They get the big win this past weekend. They move up to number 7 in the rankings. And now here, guys, is where there's going to be, I think, the most question and the most debate, or the most amount of disagreement. And that's where I have the Georgia Bulldogs. Look, the Georgia Bulldogs are really good. But again, they haven't looked amazing. They're certainly not winning with style points. They're not blowing away their opponents. They're winning games that they're supposed to win, but in many of them, they're trailing. They don't look like the better team on the field. And I don't know how long that can keep up before it bites them. Suddenly, they have a bad game, and Georgia falls. It could have been this past weekend. I thought it was going to be this past weekend. I thought Auburn had them. I was shocked that Georgia was able to come back and win this game on a last-second field goal. It was unfortunate. I thought Auburn deserved to win. AR-15 played fantastic in the second half. I mean, it was like deep ball after deep ball after deep ball. That's what I'm talking about. You guys wanted, I'm not even going to get into it. I need to see some change, more consistency in the Georgia offense. Why am I not surprised that the quarterback on the Georgia offense doesn't like the fact that they're the number 6 team in the country? What difference does it make? Why do you care if you're number 6 in the country right now? When was the last time that you had anything good to say about anyone other than yourself on your own team? I don't know. Use it as motivation if you want. Go out and blow a team out. If you don't like being number 6 in the country, then go out and blow someone out of the water. Let's take a quick look at the schedule. Who's Georgia got? Georgia's got Texas A&M. Texas A&M looked really good early on in the year. Not so much as of late. Georgia at home versus Texas A&M. Do yourself a favor, blow them out of the water. Because then you got Ohio State. If you don't blow Texas A&M out of the water, and then you don't even beat Ohio State, don't be surprised when I'm not the only one who has you at 6, 7, or 8 in the country. It's not rocket science. If you win out, you're going to move up in the rankings. But when you play UNC, you force 3 turnovers, and then you barely survive a win, that doesn't bode well. This isn't the overall top 25. These are power rankings. You don't look that powerful. That's what these rankings are. I knew this was the one that people were going to get hung up on. But at the end of the day, Georgia took an Auburn team to the wire. Auburn sucks, guys. Auburn's not good. And for as much as I criticize this next team that's number 5 on the list for not being that good and not being that consistent and not proving that they're worthy of the amount of talent that they actually have, for as much criticism as I gave North Carolina, who comes in at number 5, they're beating. We can make a case for Amari Bone being top 3 running back in the league. North Carolina holds them to 50, 60 yards on the ground. North Carolina takes care of Florida State, who has shown signs of being good. Yes, Florida State's 2-4, and on paper it doesn't look very good. But Florida State has played some good teams really closely. That Notre Dame game at the beginning of the season, I think that is more what we can see from Florida State and what I would like to see more regularly and expect to see more regularly from Florida State than the 55 yards we saw or 64 yards, whatever it was from Amari Bone. But at the end of the day, North Carolina is taking care of business. Yeah, they lost to Georgia. So how can I have North Carolina ahead of Georgia? They both have 1 loss. North Carolina's loss was to Georgia. How is North Carolina ahead of Georgia? I get it. That's the gripe. But right now, I could see Georgia having several losses. And I just don't think that they are where they need to be. Now, Georgia blows out Texas A&M next week and Georgia beats Ohio State. Guess what? They're number 1 on these power rankings in 3 weeks. I can almost guarantee it. I don't care what USC does. If USC wins next week and the week after, but Georgia blows the doors off of Texas A&M and Georgia beats Ohio State, I'm probably putting Georgia at number 1 in the power rankings because that's impressive. And USC knocking around Washington doesn't do much for me. Coming in at number 4, West Virginia. West Virginia makes the jump. This is where Georgia was last week. Now West Virginia makes the jump to number 4. Look, guys, West Virginia, that loss to Miami stung. But outside of that last second interception to lose the game on the final drive late in the 4th quarter, outside of that, West Virginia looks really good. And they're beating teams handily. I think this is a team that we can expect to see in the top 5 come the end of the season and really making a strong push for one of those final 4 spots. Coming in at number 3, we have the Miami Hurricanes. No real surprise here. Miami with the off week, not really much to do here. I certainly wasn't capable of putting West Virginia ahead of them simply because they had a bye week. After all, they did play them head-to-head. I know that doesn't bode well for Georgia playing North Carolina head-to-head. I did put North Carolina ahead of Georgia. I get it. I understand. I'm not going to go over that anymore in my rationale for that. But Miami in at number 3, no real big surprise there. And then the top 2 kind of remain they just remain the same. Very standard. Nothing shocking here. Ohio State in at number 2. Monty Wyatt just looks like a beast. And if AR-15 doesn't want to recognize that Monty Wyatt's a really good quarterback, then that's fine. That's fine. But at the end of the year, when Monty Wyatt got his team in a better position to win a national championship and the numbers are very comparable, if not better, like I don't know what, I think some people need to just take a minute and start watching the talent around the league instead of just following everything on their own team. Again, this all goes back to what I said in the preseason, guys. I don't like that there's 25 players on one single team. I'm shocked that the college series has this much parity this year because there's 25 players on certain teams. I'm shocked that's not top heavy. I'm shocked that Georgia and Notre Dame and West Virginia and Miami aren't running away with, and Ohio State aren't like running away with everything. I'm shocked that we have USC up there. I'm shocked that South Carolina has been performing well. I'm shocked that Michigan's up there. I'm shocked that Florida State has, between Florida State and USC, they have the two best running backs in the league, both of them generics. That's mind-blowing to me. And then coming in at number 1, par for the course, the USC Trojans. Right now, they just look really good. They don't have anything on in terms of user submits on the offensive side of the ball. They have a middle linebacker on defense, and that is it. But this USC team looks strong, and somebody is going to have to knock off USC if they're going to fall from that number 1 spot. And if they're going to fall from that number 1 spot, if someone's going to beat USC, who is it going to be? They just blew the doors off of Washington. Arizona State's not very good. They should blow the doors off of Arizona State. Then they've got Notre Dame, who is very inconsistent. Yes, they're in at number 7 right now in the power rankings, but very inconsistent. And then after that Notre Dame game, they have a bye. So there's a real situation where we could be looking at an undefeated USC team going into week 10 against Miami. And that, my friends, is must-see TV. Because if Miami continues to win, that game could be number 1 versus number 2. Where is Ohio State? They have Georgia. So Ohio State, week 8. This is where it's all going to go down. Week 8, we have Ohio State playing Georgia. And then we have week 10, USC playing Miami. So between week 8, Ohio State, Georgia, and week 10, USC, Miami, we're going to really see where the strength is in this college series. And 1 or 2 teams are going to put themselves in a position to almost guarantee them a shot, at worst, their conference championship. So week 8, again, Georgia, Ohio State. Week 10, USC. USC and Miami, right? Week 10, yeah. Week 10, USC and Miami. Those are the big games. Those are the ones that we're looking forward to. Week 8, Notre Dame. What's I talking about? AR-15. Week 8, keep the same energy. Week 8's where it's at. It all starts in week 8. Lito Loso, Miami. Can't wait for USC. Miami grad. He'll be there. He'll be on the sideline. Lito Loso will be on the sideline rooting on his boys. Is Lito Loso going to hand the turnover chain to someone on Miami? After Monty Wyatt gets picked off? Or not Monty Wyatt. Biggest question marks in that top 10 power rankings. Yeah, it's Georgia. Georgia's the big question mark. I get it. But we're going to get to see how that plays out in the next couple of weeks. Because like I said, Georgia could very easily knock off Ohio State and be number 1 in 2 weeks. And you shouldn't be surprised if and when that unfolds. That's pretty much going to do it, guys. Any last second thoughts, any last second questions that you have in the chat before we get on out of here? Again, if you're not following the team, at Miners RFL on Twitter, at Miners RFL on Instagram, be sure to subscribe. Again, once we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, someone will win a t-shirt. I will buy a t-shirt for one lucky subscriber once we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. I believe right now we are up over the 60 mark. So let's do what we can to get to 100. One last chance. Let's go and look through the comments, see if there's anything good in here. James Ramos, I'll be in the stands rooting for my brother. Good for you, buddy. Really looking forward to see what you can do in Mexico City. Bummed that you may not get a chance to start right away, but looking forward to see what you might be able to do, getting a little bit of reps during the preseason, getting a little reps behind McCafton. So that should be interesting. Again, Mexico City Diablos, if you didn't hear earlier in the show, Mexico City Diablos have acquired George McCafton. They traded a second and a fourth round pick to receive McCafton from the Salt Lake City Pioneers. McCafton was the worst quarterback in the league last year. And I can promise you, under the tutelage of Coach Brooks, Coach Forbes, he will not be the worst quarterback in the RFL. I'll go out on a limb. He's not in the ARC anymore. He's in the NRC. He won't be the worst quarterback in the NRC. He won't be the worst quarterback in the RFL. He will be significantly better than he was last season. And that could also bode well for James Ramos to get some reps and learn the system and give James Ramos a chance to develop some attributes, develop his player a little bit. So that way, when he does take over the starting role, he's not a 69 overall. Again, guys, James Ramos, I'm gonna end with you guys on this because I know a lot of user submitted guys out there, and a lot of you are quarterbacks. And that's great. Everybody loves the quarterback position. But what you need to understand is that there are 32 college series teams, and I believe there was about 21 or 22 college series user submitted quarterbacks. About 13 of you guys are not even going to get drafted. Like, you won't even get drafted. And to the conversation about parity and how there's 4 or 5 guys right now that are vying for the number 1 or number 2 overall quarterback spot, James Ramos was the 3rd quarterback selected. He's a 69 overall, and he's looking at 3rd string in the RFL. 3rd string in the RFL. The 5th quarterback selected went middle of the 2nd round, and he's also looking at 3rd string. And on his team, he's certainly 3rd string. San Antonio Dreadnoughts have 2 very capable quarterbacks ahead of Owen Jack on the depth chart. I think we were all mind blown that the Dreadnoughts went out and selected Owen Jack. I think we were first mind blown that Owen Jack fell that far. And then I think we were even more shocked that the Dreadnoughts were the team that took him. But it just goes to show you guys, if you have other friends, if you have guys that are going to join the league, because again, you can only have one player in the college series moving forward. You're not allowed to have multiple players in the RFL. You're not allowed to have multiple players in the RFL. So if you know guys that want to join the league, and I think many of you do, have a conversation with them about what the league needs, because I'm telling you right now, the league doesn't need quarterbacks. And if AR-15 wants to be known as the best quarterback in college series history, and then get drafted in the 2nd or 3rd round and sit on the bench for 3 years, that's great. Congratulations. You can be the Tim Tebow of the RFL. You can be the best college quarterback ever play and suck in the RFL, never see the field in the RFL, and perhaps quarterback isn't even your best position. Talk to your friends and look at what the league needs. The league needs offensive linemen. No one wants to be an offensive lineman. Fine, I get it. Look at corners. Look at running backs, because the RFL lifespan of a running back is significantly lower than some other positions. There's a lot of quarterbacks that are going to get undrafted. That is my public service announcement for everyone submitting players into the RFL. And I'm going to wrap the show up on that. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. Love and appreciate all of the support. At Miners RFL on Twitter, at Miners RFL on Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, things that you'd like to see discussed on the show, you can hit me up on Discord. I'm always around. We'll always interact with you. I'm one of the people who actually prefers and likes going through my DMs. I'm not going to dig through the archives of the RFL chat to try to find conversations from 48 hours ago that are buried under 175 other messages. So if there's something that you want me to see or something that you want to talk to me about, send it to me in a DM. I will always respond. If you want to come on the show and join me on the show, come on in. I know some of you might think that I have a closed door policy because all I do is talk about this and talk about that. And you might think that you're just going to come on the show and I'm going to tell you how much you suck. It's not the case, guys. It's not the case. I will come on here and tell you what I see. I will come on here and tell you what I think is happening and what might happen. And I will tell you what the common perception might be. And I will tell you if you are being unrealistic or irrational. But that's one thing that you won't get from me. I will not give you irrationality. You might not agree with it, and you might think that what I'm saying is ridiculous. But I promise you, if you looked at it objectively, it's not irrational. Right now, the most outlandish thing that you might take away from tonight's episode is that I put Georgia at number 6 in the power rankings. Right? Raise your hand. Thumbs up in the chat if you think the most outlandish and potentially ridiculous thing that I said tonight is that Georgia is the number 6 team in the power rankings. How many thumbs up do we have in the chat that that's the most ridiculous thing that was said? And if that's the most ridiculous thing that you think I said, that's not that ridiculous. Style points matter in the college series, and we're not getting style points out of Georgia. We're not. I would like to. They have a quarterback that can give them style points. Certainly the swagger is there. He's capable of throwing 4 touchdowns in a game. He's capable of throwing a 50, 60-yard deep ball. It's all there. They just need to put it all together, and we need more style points. We don't need 27-23 victories at home against inferior teams. We need 38-10 victories on the road against common, difficult teams within the conference. That's what Georgia needs. And they're going to get their test in 2 weeks against Ohio State. So mark my words, Georgia beats Ohio State, and I'm going to have a hard time not putting Georgia at number 1 in the country. Again, that's barring that they get through Texas A&M this coming week. That's going to do it for me, guys. I know we actually went a little bit over. We went much longer than we normally do. So I appreciate all of the support. I appreciate every one of you checking in. Shout out to Mix for checking in today. Mitch also, I know you guys got a lot going on with front office stuff on a Tuesday evening. So appreciate Mitch and Rob. And we got Zach Burkus up in the chat. What's going on, Zach Burkus? He's got the sideways thumb because he has no idea. So he wasn't listening earlier on in the show when I talked about Georgia and how they were ranked 6th in my power rankings. That's pretty much what you missed. AR15, always love and appreciate the support, buddy. We'll talk to you next week. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can hit me up in Discord. Check out the team's Twitter page or Instagram. That's going to do it. Again, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been Coach Chris Dunn of the Sacramento Miners for another episode of Miners Live. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.